Welcome to the December 16th meeting of the Murfreesboro City Council. If you'll bow with me, I have the prayer and the pledge. Father, I thank you for this night, Lord, that we get to be here to represent not only the citizens of Murfreesboro, that, Father, we get to represent the fine employees in this city. Lord, we pray for our Vice Mayor, Lord, that you give her health, that you give her wellness. Lord, we pray for our friends in Kentucky and all the families there that were affected with the tornado this past week. But most of all, Father, we thank you for the reason for the opportunity that we get to celebrate Christmas and for the true meaning of Christmas and for the blessings that you've given this city. So, Father, I pray a special thanks for this past year and the accomplishments and the blessings we had in the city. But more importantly, Lord, we pray for this upcoming year that you give us guidance, that you give us wisdom, and, Lord, you continue to bless Murfreesboro. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, it's my pleasure tonight. I was going to read the proclamation, but I've been blinded by Matt Taylor's jacket that's to the left of me. So, get Matt. Now, tonight's a big night. I know most of us now, through technology, who couldn't go and watch the game a couple of weeks ago, we had the opportunity to watch Oakland throttle Summit. I mean, to put it bluntly, or to put it nicely, I should say. But I wanted to be able to recognize, I think out of any team that we've been able to have come up over this past year, we've had Blackman come up, we've had PCA come up, we've had all these people who've been successful in the state. But I don't think there's any school in the city limits of Murfreesboro or Rutherford County who's epitomized excellence more than Coach Creasy in Oakland over the last many years. I think it's 3 out of 4 state championships that they've had, 3 state championships over the last 4 years. So, Coach, if you'll come up, I've got something for you, and then we'll have you maybe introduce your players and your coaches who are here. So, I will say Coach Creasy and I have gotten to know each other over the last couple of years, not really from talking, but we've been playing word games on our phone, and he's not your typical high school, what I'd say, or your typical football coach. This guy is super smart. He beats me every time I play that game. So I don't know why I'm giving you this now after that. So, all right, here we've got a proclamation for Coach and his team. Whereas through its discipline, dedication, and hard work, the Oakland Patriots high school football team finished an undefeated season. And whereas head coach Kevin Creasy led the Oakland Patriots on a storybook ride with 15 wins, no losses, ending with a 43-26 victory over Summit High School in the 2021 Class 6A Blue Cross Bowl Championship. Whereas, including wins over 1AA Tennessee State Champion South Pittsburgh, the 6A Mississippi Private School State Champion Madison Ridgeland Academy, the Tennessee Division 2AA State Champion Lipscomb Academy, the Division 2AA State Runner-Up Christ Presbyterian Academy, Maryville High School, which ended their 22-year home playoff winning streak, and the 2020 Tennessee 5A State Champion and 2021 6A runner-up Summit High School. A lot of those who are watching and listening to this, when you're wondering why Oakland's playing people who are out of their class, it's because nobody else wants to play you guys. Whereas along the way, Coach Creasy, along with his coaching staff, has molded the team into a physical and disciplined powerhouse, capturing the Class 6A championship. Now, therefore, I, Shane McFarland, Mayor of the City of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim December 16, 2021 as Oakland High School Football Team Day in the city of Murfreesboro, and encourage all citizens to join me in this great recognition. And after having 3 out of 4, I thought it was also appropriate that Coach Creasy, you guys not only would get a proclamation, but that you would get the key to the city.
Appreciate it. Wow, what an honor, what an honor. First off, I just want to say I love the jacket. You know, it's kind of like our flag O. We have a flag O, and you know, it's kind of like our symbol on the 50-yard line. And I was like, you know, you can only hate the Patriots if you hate America. If you love America, you should love the Patriots. So if you love America, you should love that jacket, red, white, and blue. There's a reason it's our school colors, and Mayor McFarland, I do have to let him win every now and then, so he'll keep playing me. It's kind of like a couple of these guys on the schedule. But we've been really lucky here lately. We've been blessed, and, you know, I thought it was really telling about how our city's been blessed with the opening prayer. And, you know, I think Oakland High School and all of Rutherford County schools have been blessed, and we've been blessed with a lot of success, but we've also been blessed with good coworkers. You know, this isn't a one-man show. I've got a lot of good coaches, and I've got a lot of good players, a lot of good kids raised by good parents, and when the parents don't do their job, we try to pick up the slack, and there's a lot of times that we're right behind a parent trying to do the things that are right by the child. And right now, these guys are good young men, and they're going to be real good, productive citizens. They're going to be good husbands. They're going to be good fathers. They're going to be good members of our society, and hopefully they stick around Murfreesboro. But I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. And like I said, I'm not going to take a lot of your time. I'm just going to want all these guys, coaches and seniors, and all you guys stand up and be recognized. And one more round of applause for these guys. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the recognition. We were very honored to recognize these guys, but also their accomplishments, but also we were really happy to represent all of Murfreesboro, and we hope we made you proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
Yep.
Hey, and we can't say 3 out of 4 years. Hopefully, when you're back here next year, we've given you a proclamation and the key to the city, so we're going to have to figure out something to give them for next year. So y'all work hard and come back and see us.
Funny, you know.
Red jacket.
Don't want to take up any more time, but I do have this order form for state championship hoodies. It's going toward our rings. We're going to try to get every one of these guys a championship ring, and I know that the mayor has a copy machine in the back, and I'm just going to leave this with him. And if you can't get to him, see Linda Hodge, and we'll be sure that you visit our website, our school website, and you can order online. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Good job, man.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, you have the consent agenda in front of you. You have 15 items that are on the list. Anything that needs to be removed from the consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, you have the minutes of the November 17th and 18th regular meetings. Any additions or deletions to the minutes?
If there are none, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Brown.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll move into old business. You have several land use matters. Item 17, Ordinance 21 OZ 33, rezoning property along Bridge Avenue. This is second and final reading.
Move for approval. Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. You have 21 OZ 34. This is zoning property located north of DeJarnette Lane, and this is second and final reading.
Move for approval. Second.
Ms. Brown.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Ordinance 21OZ35, zoning for property located south of South Rutherford Boulevard. This is second and final reading.
Move for approval.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. 21OZ36, rezoning property along Franklin Road. Second and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Ordinance 21038, amending the zoning ordinance regarding the city core overlay district.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Under ordinance, you have fiscal year '22. This is a budget amendment, and this is administration.
Aaron said you had it.
This one says new business at the top.
It's an amendment to increase the headcount and restructure the attorneys in the legal department. It allows one of the attorneys that has long served in the legal department and handled mostly public safety issues for a while now, and done so in a very good manner, to be assigned to public safety, and then to backfill that with another attorney to handle the civil matters in the legal department. It also is a reclassification for solid waste drivers and equipment operators, both in the streets department. It allows us to be competitive in the market for those drivers. There's a strong need for those to both recruit and retain those that we have, so it's adjusting those individuals, and also transit operators, to which also faces an issue of recruiting and retaining those drivers. So right now we have some issues in those departments, and we think that increasing their level of salaries will help us in that respect. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, we'd ask the council to approve the budget amendment.
Just for clarification's sake, because I've had a couple of emails or calls. So these are ones, and I think I know that these are ones we already kind of knew that we needed to make some changes, just because we've had difficulty in hiring and keeping these particular positions for well over a year now.
Well, for the last
about them.
about 3 years, and we've done several different things to try and bring them in. I think we've been successful to a certain extent, but I think one of the things we need to focus on is making sure that they're compensated at a rate we can hold on to them, because the private market is just taking them too quickly.
So this is separate from the pay study, is what
It is.
I'm kind of secondly say, is with that, and that's still coming. That's close. Is that close, or?
I believe
Had a
that's
goal, I think, of.
Yeah, I don't see Randolph here, but that we've gotten the results of that, and I think we're analyzing that internally, and then we'll have that to council right after the first of the year.
And I think we had a goal of getting that back to us approximately by the end of the year. Is that what we had kind of talked about, so that we could then make some decisions based on it? So we're on top of that, pretty close, right?
We're pretty close to that.
Okay.
Hopefully we can get that in a workshop on January. We'll take a look at what the workshop looks like, but we'll probably put that in January workshop.
It'll be a little lengthy, but
Yeah, it might be.
whatever it takes. Yeah.
We'll see what the study looks like and how long the discussion might be on that.
Okay.
For those pay increases, to be clear on the timing of it, the ordinance, because this is first reading, it will be a retro after approval on the second reading. So you'll approve the second reading at the January 6th, but it will be effective January 2nd.
Gotcha. That's fine.
All right, we need to consider this budget amendment. This is ordinance 21043 on first reading.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll move to land use matters. We have Plan of Services, Annexation, and Zoning for property located along Vills Road, and we'll need to conduct a public hearing for the Plan of Services and the annexation.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor McFarland and members of council. Our first public hearing tonight regarding this property, as you mentioned, is for the annexation and zoning. It's the area in blue on the map before you. It's 123 acres along the north side of Beals Road and along the west side of Double Springs Road. It's part of the Hall family property, and portion of the Hall family property, this gray area, was actually annexed back in 2017, I believe it was. There was another developer who was interested in developing that, so he requested annexation and zoning to RS 6, 10, and 12. Development of that property never materialized, and it remained in the hands of the Hall family. A new developer has the property under contract, the balance of the property, and the property that was already annexed into the city limits, and is requesting the annexation of the balance of the Hall property, which is about 123 acres. We're also including in the annexation study the right-of-way of Veals Road from this point over, and the right-of-way of Double Springs Road down to the intersection as well. The plan of services has been included in your agenda materials. It indicates that we'll be able to provide services to the subject property upon annexation. We'll mention that there's an existing single-family home on the property. It's in poor condition. It's unoccupied. According to Mr. Taylor, and I don't know how trustworthy a source is in a jacket like that, but according to Mr. Taylor, the house is about to fall in. Our fire department has indicated that they'll be able to only provide a reduced level of fire protection and emergency services to that existing house due to access limitations and fire flow limitation, or not fire flow limitations, but lack of a fire hydrant directly adjacent to that house. But considering that it is vacant and that it is in poor condition, and that the applicants, if they are to purchase that property, intend to demolish it in pretty short order, staff feels comfortable with the reduced level of MFRD services for that existing structure in the interim until it's torn down. With that being said, as I mentioned, we'll be able to provide services to it. Oh, and sewer is not available to the property. So if it develops, it would develop on a step system, and we'll go over that in a little bit greater detail during the zoning public hearing. Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on the annexation and plan of services and recommended its approval to you. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, we need to conduct a public hearing for the Plan of Services and the annexation. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, if you'll come to the podium, if you'll keep all your comments directed to the council, we'll get those addressed at the end of the public hearing. If you're representing a group, you'll have 5 minutes. If you're speaking on behalf of yourself, you'll have 3 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak, please come to the podium.
Hi, I'm Richard Baines. I still live on Parkview Terrace here in Murfreesboro. I'm not exactly for or against this development, but I want to point out something that's not included in the hydrology and topography, which is page 09 of the presentation. And I quote, "All stormwater on the site drains towards Veals Road and eventually ends up in Black Fox Springs before heading towards Todd Lake. Therein lies the problem. Almost 60 years ago, I designed and built a home on Lakeshore Drive, later moving across the lake to the corner of Parkview Terrace and Broad Street, where I live today. I have witnessed on a daily basis the impact that development has had on Todd Lake and the surrounding area. Over the years, Todd Lake has, by default, become a holding pond for stormwater runoff from a multitude of housing developments. Its ability to continue as such is maxed out, due not to a capacity limit, but rather to flow restrictions downstream. This has recently caused the flooding of homes at the corner of Bradyville Pike and Parkview Terrace, as well as flooding the parking lot of the Parkview apartments. Stormwater from future development along South Rutherford as well as Bradyville Pike will only exacerbate the problem, which will eventually impact both Lytle and Town Creeks. I have discussed the problem with Sam Huddleston, and he is far better qualified than I am to fill you in on the details. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baines. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and we'll now consider Resolution 21RPS39 for the plan of services. Matthew, will we get the drainage questions asked or answered during the zoning? Is that where?
Yeah, or if you'd like to have Mr. Taylor come to the podium now and address that, I'm sure he'd be happy to.
Yeah.
Matt Taylor from SEC 850 Middle Tennessee Boulevard. So Mr. Baines is right. This eventually does get over to Todd's Lake as a good portion of this portion of our city and community drain. I would say that a good portion of the developments that drain toward Todd's Lake today were prior to our stormwater regulations that took effect back around 2010. And I took a quick look at the area after Mr. Baines mentioned that. I did not see any stormwater ponds or any of those features. So we will have all those features on our site that provide not only pre versus post for rate of runoff reduction, but also water quality as well as stream bank protection. So I think all those items will go into helping to mitigate Mr. Baines's concerns. In addition, we are preserving a tremendous amount of wetlands on site, which are always good to maintain to help clean the water and let the water infiltrate back into the ground more naturally. So I would say today the site is largely row crop. I think after we're done, it'll have nice lawns. The step systems will be green, grassy areas, which would help limit the erosion that comes off the site today to a lesser degree in the future.
Mr. Huddleston, do you have anything you want to add?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Mr. Baines is correct. This is Todd's Lake system. A little background on Todd's Lake. It's a collection of a series of closed depressions that fill up and overtop until it reaches an overtopping elevation at Martin Luther King and Broad Street. And we call that overtop there Chelsea Place Pond. I'm sure many of you have witnessed that over the years. And so the areas that Mr. Baines identified were part of our flood study update from 2002. And so all the properties that he mentioned were identified in the flood study as flood areas. And so we haven't seen flooding beyond what was originally predicted to flood with the original flood study. The parking lots and those sorts of things, we anticipated that they would have water on them from time to time. I am not personally aware of any homes that have gotten water in them, but certainly the driveways and parking lots on a couple of developments, and then in certain areas, certain common areas and open areas in that Bradyville Pike, Middle Tennessee Boulevard area do get water on them, excessive water from time to time. It's interesting when you're a water nerd like me, you follow the rainfall totals and you try to understand rain events. So in March of this year, we had what I believe to be at least a 100-year event in the Todd's Lake area. I compared some elevations that some homeowners provided us following that rain event. I think it was March the 26th, a Sunday morning. And when I compared those to what we knew the existing elevations and flood elevations to be out there, we were very close to a 100-year flood event. And in that event, still nothing on Todd's Lake or nothing in that Todd's Lake system had water in a finished building. So I'm confident with Mr. Taylor's work on the Vills Road property that it would still be protective of our downstream system of Todd's Lake. I'll be glad to answer any questions now or either during the next public hearing. Thank you.
All right, we need to consider Resolution 21R PS 39, and this is just for the plan of services.
Move for approval.
Motion and a second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Now need to consider Resolution 21R A 39, and this is for the annexation.
Need a motion? I'll make that motion for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll now need to consider or have a public hearing for the zoning of 205.5 acres. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the companion zoning request, and it's a combination zoning of property simultaneous with annexation and rezoning of the Hall property that was annexed and zoned 4 years ago. As I mentioned before, the Hall property that's already in the city is zoned RS6, RS10, RS12. And you'll see on the map, those are the areas in the dark blue, light green, and the orange color. Those are requested to be rezoned to PRD, Planned Residential District. And then the light blue area is proposed to be zoned PRD, Planned Residential District, simultaneous with annexation. The property totals about 205 acres, and the applicants propose a residential development with 403 dwelling units for a overall gross density of just under 2 dwelling units per acre. Surrounding the subject property are the Stonegate and Crestview subdivisions to the west, which are zoned RS10. To the north, zoned RS10 and RS6, is the developing Farmhouse Downs subdivision, which a plat on that has not been recorded yet, but it's currently under development. To the east are residential uses in the unincorporated area of Rutherford County. And to the south, across Fields Road, is the common area of the developing Carter's Retreat subdivision. Those lots are on about 6,000 to 7,000 square feet, if I'm not mistaken. Property is primarily undeveloped, with the exception of one single-family home and a cemetery. The future land use map of the Murfreesboro 2035 Comprehensive Plan recommends that the property develop as suburban residential, which allows single-family detached uses at a density of 2 to 3.54 dwelling units per acre. And it also allows attached uses if there is an ample amount of open space provided. And Mr. Taylor will go over the proposed open spaces and amenities. And so the City Council will need to determine if the development is consistent with the suburban residential land use designation of the Murfreesboro 2035 Comprehensive Plan. The Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this matter and recommended its approval, subject to a number of staff comments to be addressed prior to the City Council public hearing. Ms. Holly Smith on our staff has been working with Mr. Taylor to address those comments. There were a number of those comments that dealt with transportation infrastructure, and those comments have been incorporated into the plan, as well as architecture. And our staff has been working hard with Mr. Taylor and the design team on improving the architectural elevations for the proposed homes. And Mr. Taylor will present those to you. We feel like we've made quite a bit of progress in between Planning Commission and City Council on improving the quality of the architecture of the development. With that being said, I'll ask Mr. Taylor to come up and give a presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Blomley. Mayor, members of the council, I'm Matt Taylor of SCC. I've also got Mr. Chris Cowan of Meritage Homes, the applicant on the project, with me as well. And we do have a brief presentation over what we have called Greystone. As Mr. Blomley said, the property is about 205 acres. About a third of it today has been annexed. Previously, it is currently a mixture of woods and row crop, with the woods being on the east and west side and the row crop being located between. Today, it is a mixture of RS 6, 10, and 12, as well as RM in the county. Site has good access to water, electric. It's encumbered by TVA easement on the western third of the property. And as Mr. Blomley said earlier, this site would be served by a step system managed by Murfreesboro Water Resources Department. The site today generally drains from the northeast to the southwest corner of the property, as shown here. That is the existing house that Mr. Blomley mentioned earlier. That will be torn down as soon as we have a permit in hand. Some of the existing row crops, or at least they were existing a few months ago. Those TVA towers on the property. This is the Vills Road. This is looking back toward Bradeville Pike, so the property would be to the right of this picture. This is in the subdivision to the west. I believe this is Medford Campbell Boulevard. And then this is on the east side of Double Springs, just to give you an example of some of the homes around us. The plan itself, we have requested for a PRD zoning to allow just over 400 homes. That is a mixture between townhomes and single-family detached. So that gives us a net density, or overall density, of just under 2 units to the acre. That is a mixture of 30-foot homes, 40-foot homes, and the single-family detached or single-family attached townhomes. All these homes will be a member of the HOA, which will be managed by a third-party association. The townhomes and the 30-foot homes would be on HPRs or sold through an HPR, while the 40-foot homes would be on fee simple, single, individual lots of record. All of our utilities here will be underground. This plan, you can see, preserves a tremendous amount of wetlands, tremendous amount of open space, preserves an existing cemetery on site, all while constructing the collector street on the western portion of the property from the city's major transportation plan. We'll have sidewalks throughout all streets. Almost all the streets here will be public except for in the townhome sections. Those will be private, and then they will be maintained by the HOA. And then one of my favorite parts of the design is most of the homes in this development will back up to permanent open space, whether that's step, field, amenity space, or wetlands, or berming and screening of some kind. So I think that will make that unique. The 30-foot homes are located on the eastern side of the site. All these will be side entry garages. They'll start at 1,400 square feet and go up. They will be sold through an HPR. Our setbacks on these are very typical for all of our developments in Murfreesboro. And then all brick, stone, or cement board siding on the materials. As Mr. Blomley said, we've worked pretty extensively on all of our architecture to make it better for not only our residents, but for the city and community. Here's some examples of the single-story home. All these are the same floor plan. They're just different facades, so we do not have a monotonous occurrence throughout. So we'll change up colors and materials. Try to make the front porches more important. Again, same elevation, same floor plan, just different elevations. A lot of different colors, building planes. 40-foot homes are, again, on individual lots of record. These will be primarily on the western portion of the site. Again, will be a mixture of 1- and 2-story homes. These will be front entry garages. Again, these will very standard setbacks for our projects in Murfreesboro. 35 foot to that front garage, so you can have 4 cars outside on the driveway. 5-foot sides and 20-foot rears. Same building materials here. We'll have a consistent material palette throughout. Again, a mixture of single story. All these are the same floor plan, just different front elevations. And then the townhomes, we have located those on the internal portion of the site. These will start at 1,200 square feet and go up. They'll all have garages. They will again be sold through an HPR. Setbacks will be 35 foot on the front to again allow 2 cars to park back to back. Same materials here as on the detached homes. We have split these up into a mixture of 4 and 6 unit buildings. You can see we've wrapped around those porches in specific locations, create interest on the ends, decorative garage doors, varying roof lines throughout. Amenity-wise, our main structured amenity is going to be off the Collector Street on the west side. That'll consist of a pool, a doghouse, and playground. Some examples of those. We've located the dog park away from homes and away from the playground. And then we've got an abundance of open field area for the kids to go play wiffle ball, play soccer, just make friends in general. And we're preserving over 50% permanent open space, whether that's through a step field or a common area or an amenity or wetlands. So a tremendous amount of open space will be here for perpetuity. We've also strategically planned buffering for varying reasons. Along the Collector Street, we want some aesthetic treatment there as you go through, so we've got some landscape plantings there. We've also got along Vills Road, we've got berms and screening type A buffers to screen the back of homes as well as the stormwater areas. Then along Double Springs, we will have berms and type B buffers to screen the back of homes there. And then between the townhomes and the single family detached, we will have the city standard type C buffers there as well. Access, we have access to 4 existing streets shown here, 2 off of Vills, 1 off Double Springs, and then another off of Medford Campbell to the west. And then we've planned to connect to 2 future locations coming out of the Farmhouse Downs to the north. Though whoever gets there first will make the first connection. And then we'll be constructing a portion of this Collector Street on the western part of the site from the city's major transportation plan. And then off-site, we've done a traffic study, and it showed that we needed a southbound left turn lane on Bradeville Pike onto Vills. We will construct that with our first phase of construction. That will also need a signal at approximately our around 75% build out, so that will happen around lot 300 at this same intersection. So I'll be happy to answer any questions now or after the hearing.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? All right, we'll need to open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this 205.5 acre zoning request, please come to the podium. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll consider on first reading ordinance 21OZ39.
So moved. Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we need to go back to item 21 quickly. I think Mr. Tucker has a request.
Yes, I apologize for this, but there was a technical error or omission in Ordinance 21038 that we identified earlier this week, or one of my legal assistants in the legal department identified, and that is that it does not contain the standard enactment effective date clause at the end. So what I'm going to ask is that you consider amending the ordinance so that the ordinance has an effective date Because right now, the ordinance, as it was presented in your agenda packet, does not have an effective date. So what that would look like is that there would be a section 3 added at the bottom of page 12 of the ordinance, right before the mayor's signature block. Section 3 would read that this ordinance shall take effect 15 days after its passage upon second and final reading, the public welfare and the welfare of the city requiring it. So while substantively no change, it's just a technical thing.
I make the motion, we add section 3 as you read it.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion is second. Mr. Brown, please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll now get recommendations from Mr. Blombley to schedule public hearings.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 7 to schedule, and we would recommend that those be scheduled for January the 27th of 2022.
Move we approve the recommendation. Second.
Motion is second.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blomley. All right, we have Resolution 21R38. This is a TDOT procurement policy. Mr. Kerr.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. For the city to maintain its partnership with TDOT to utilize state and federal funds, it is required to follow FHWA and TDOT's policies and procedures. The city has been adhering to the TDOT procurement policy concerning consultant selection, but has not formally adopted this resolution. Staff is seeking approval to adopt this resolution.
So move. Second.
Motion is second.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, we now have, on motion, we have the Jordan Farms Public Restroom. Ms. Jackson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're requesting approval for the construction of a restroom with a pavilion at the soccer fields that are located at Jordan Farm. These fields are a vital part of the programming for the Siegel Soccer Complex and are heavily used. We recently added lighting to the fields, but we need a restroom. The project requires the installation of a pump station and force main. The total construction project is $713,616. We were awarded a local Parks and Recreation grant from TDEC for $250,000 that is specific to this project. Because the facility is necessary in order to make the site accessible for all of our citizens, $100,000 will be covered from our ADA funding, and the remainder by fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 21 CIP budget. Welcome any questions. Nate Williams is here and can answer questions of how this fits into our commitment with TSSA, and Ryan Maloney from Griggs & Maloney is here if you have any technical questions about the design.
What do we have out there right now?
I'm sorry?
What do we have as far as bathroom facilities out there right now?
Portable toilets.
Okay.
Don't look at me, Rick. There's no questions. I'll move for approval. Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Thank you, Ms. Jackson. All right, we now have a contract for a sign consultant, building and codes.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The item before you tonight is a consultant contract for preparation of a new sign ordinance. The current ordinance was adopted in 1984 and has been amended over 80 times. Although the amendments were necessary, the resulting ordinance is not user-friendly and unduly convoluted. The new ordinance will allow more consistent interpretation and better serve our commercial establishments. In addition, we'll look into including more modern technology into our ordinance, and will also include stakeholders' input. We advertised for proposals using the competitive sealed proposals. 3 proposals were received. A committee of 5 interviewed 2 companies. Selected Zoneco as the best candidate. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
What's the time frame on the new ordinance?
About a 9-month process.
And I know everyone up here really enjoys when we talk about signs, because no one gets offended by signs, so.
I kind of, yeah.
I'm kidding, Mr. Holtz.
I know you are.
But
They're necessary.
absolutely.
So is this something that you've kind of requested to have the consultant come in and because you think we need more changes to it? Or-
Yes. Like I say, it was written in 1984. It's been amended 80 times. We attempted to do it in-house, but it's a long process. This consulting firm has lots of experience throughout the country. They have an attorney on staff. We're looking for a good new sign ordinance.
Mr. Holtz, I say that jokingly, but I think it's important. It's an expensive study, but if you figure that it's been 1984 since we've really had something come through, I think it's important to have a third party put this ordinance together, because every time that we discuss signage and we handle that ourselves, there's the thought that we're, I don't want to say cooking the books with the signage, but it's better to have someone that deals with that, and it keeps it. They may come and look at our signage and say it's too restrictive in other areas. So I think it's something that could be beneficial to small businesses and to our larger businesses.
I would agree.
Have a motion? Kurt?
Yep.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We have purchase of scubas for 2 new apparatus. I think that's how did I say that okay?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. It's self-contained breathing apparatus, or otherwise known as air packs, the easy name that we would call them. But we're purchasing those for the 2 new apparatus that we have coming in. One is in late '22, the other one in spring of '23. The reason that we're wanting to make this purchase now is we have been informed these are very consistent with the air packs that we have, the same models and everything, and we have been informed that there's going to be an 8 to 10% price increase coming in January, and likely additional price increases after the first of the year just because of the components within those air packs, and so we're trying to get out in front of that price increase. But the purchase would be a total of $92,499 for the 12 self-contained breathing apparatuses.
Move for approval.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we have the next item to purchase RAE gas monitors.
Yeah, these are for the new ladder truck that we just had delivered. The gas monitors are basically 4 gas meters that can measure gases that can cause issues within the house, including oxygen levels, flammable gases, carbon monoxide levels, et cetera.
Move for approval.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you, Chief. All right, we have the Central Square Tri-Tech contract extension. Mr. Terry.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Tonight we bring before you our annual maintenance contract for Central Square for our computer-aided dispatch system. This software is basically where the call for service begins and goes all the way through the final report that a citizen would get and everything in between. We entered into this contract in 2015. It's been an annual ongoing contract since, and we recommend that we continue with this particular system and approve to pay the invoice and continue with this.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we also have the next item to purchase radio equipment.
Yes, sir. This is a request for approval to make a purchase of some additional radio equipment. This is primarily for the new patrol cars that we have on order. This will be this is actually the first radio purchase that we have made since 2017 when you approved the digital system. So we've been able to manage everything from that point forward, but now we've reached that point where we need some additional radios to accommodate the growing fleet and the additional personnel.
Any questions?
I will say in addition to that, the radios that you approved in 2014, we have now been passing down to other city departments. We have outfitted the golf course, streets and sanitation have radios. We just gave transportation some to test with, along with Park and Rec, and we're going to continue outfitting other city departments on the new system as well.
So moved.
Please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye, thank you, Mr. Cherry. All right, we now have an agreement with Stansel Electric Company for the traffic signal electrical maintenance. Mr. Kerr.
Mayor, members of council, this is the city's annual contract for installation and maintenance of traffic signals, school zone signs, and citywide electrical repairs. The proposed contract is a one-year agreement and is renewable annually for an additional 4-year period. The lowest responsible bidder received was Stansel Electric Company in the amount of $349,500. I'm available for any questions you may have.
There aren't any. I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second, please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Thank you.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Kerr. All right, we'll move to the Salem Barfield Improvements, ELI Engineering Supplement Number 2. Mr.
Mayor,
Core.
Mayor, council members, thank you for the opportunity to come before you tonight. Just wanted to give a little brief history on the Salem Barfield area sewer improvements. We had this at the workshop. I think it was the November council workshop. Just presented this to the Planning Commission yesterday. We had about 2,100 feet of 15-inch sewer that we were trying to increase to 24-inch, and then we had some pipes under Salem Highway. We bid that this past year, and the bids came in much higher than expected. So we've increased that cost estimate, and we want to take these elements and package it with this other larger sewer improvements for the Salem Barfield area. So we've revised the estimate to be $2 million. This was a current engineering services with ELI for $97,000 roughly, or almost $98,000. The amendment number 2 to this is what we went over at the workshop in November, where we're looking at about a $6.35 million improvements to get these 3,724 new connections for sewer. As I told the Planning Commission and mentioned to you guys yesterday, in November, that we are at capacity. When you take our current existing connections in the Salem Highway area and you add what we've booked or what we've committed, we are at risk of overflow if those committed connections come online. So in order to plan for the future, we're looking at this $6.35 million in additional services. So to get that started, it's a $444,500 supplement to ELI's contract. Add it all together, you're around $8.35 million and 540-something thousand, which is right at 6.5%. So it's not an exorbitant engineering fee, and we're asking them to make this a priority and jump on it real quick so we can try to bring bids back to you by summer of 2022 and start construction hopefully by fall if the bids come in reasonable. We've got some folks anxious for us to start issuing will serve letters and allowing for future connections to happen in this corridor. So I'm available for questions if you have any.
I don't know that I really have a question, but just kind of a comment and something to kind of bring up conversation with the council on this. I think this is something we're going, for my liking, that we would kind of talk through to make sure how we're anticipating to disperse these units through that property Or are we gonna just allow it to be, well, first come, first serve, and if a bunch of people come in there and soak up 16 units an acre, and all of a sudden we've spent $6 million, $8 million for 2, 3, 4 property owners? You know, and honestly, just for my purposes, I wouldn't want to spend $500,000, you know, much less 6 or 8 million, until we've had a discussion to decide what we're willing to do to ensure that we don't put ourselves in a position where we're telling people who have a zoning, have an entitlement, that, sorry, because you didn't start soon enough, we're done, we're out. Our 3724 is over. And so if, you know, for my preference, or whatever you want to call it, I'd want us to have a discussion about how we're going to deal with that before I spend $500,000, you know. And I definitely wouldn't support saying we're going to spend $6 million and just let it be first come, first serve. So y'all don't, I mean, that's why we're 7 of us or whatever, but you guys, that'd be my opinion on it.
I think the math we did yesterday at planning was, it came down to about 3.8 units per acre.
Yeah.
After that.
There's about 971 acres, and it's a combination of inside and outside the city limits right now. I think, and I don't want to, I just wrote the memo with the stakeholder memo, because we want to put a memo out to the stakeholders that state, you know, hey, right now we're no more will serve letters, no more construction drawing approvals until we break ground on some improvements in this area. So I think we've got 320, maybe, or 275 acres that are in the city, and the majority, or 325, something in that range, and the other part is outside the city limits, but it's inside the, you know, the basin or the bowl to be served. So 971 total, combination of inside the city, outside the city, and you just, how do you want to? Because 3,724 units is it. I mean, there's not going to be another potential upgrade. The good news, like I told the Planning Commission yesterday, is downstream everything's good. I mean, we can add these connections in, and we don't have to, you know, we don't have this domino effect of having to do upgrades downstream of this. But this would be kind of the final project to get the last bit of capacity out of this collection system out there.
One of the things that we asked yesterday that they didn't know the answer to, that I think we ought to know, is out of the 350 acres that we've already got zoned and that's already in the city,
What's the zoning?
how many of these units have we already got in, you know, how it's zoned right now? What number of units do we, you know, would we take if we never changed a thing out there, right? Because we would have to know that in order to be able to put some sort of you know, the only thing I could come up with just kind of quickly yesterday when we talked about this was, you know, do we say, well, you know, anybody who comes, maybe it's not 3.8's the maximum, but maybe it's 5. So there's a little bit of wiggle room for the early developers, right? But we can't even know that, because this may already be at 7. The 350, you know, the 350 acres that are already in the city may already be at 6, 7 acres. I mean, per.
Well, I know this, and I can't quote you the numbers, but just looking at it, I know that the city zoning will consume a majority of that 3724, that 3,720. It won't go over it per the current zoning, but it will leave, you know, maybe 1,000 or less to be distributed to what I would call the outside the city limit component right now. We can get you that. We can get you those numbers if that's the. I would just say that depending on how long you want to make folks wait, we've kind of heard. I mean, there's people out there ready to go, and we've said no. And getting the design going, it's going to take, you know, a few months to get the design done and get the bid package ready.
Overall, the 6 or 8 million, will that go back as a special assessment district in that area?
There's a lot of options there, yes, sir. I mean, we talked about, we could take it, bring it back as a new assessment. We can take some of the current special assessments out there and what's outstanding in those balances, combine it and create a whole new special assessment, and with the ARP money that's coming out, we could do a 50-50 split, let the ARP money fund half and do an assessment to recoup the other half. I mean, we can do a lot of combinations of trying to reimburse ourselves for what money we put out there.
That's the kind of stuff that I hope we would talk about and kind of get figured out, because it's a,
How long does the engineering take?
I would expect it to take, not that long. It's, a lot of the stuff that they're doing is going to be upsizing pipes that are currently in the trenches that they're in. And there's some outside, some new alignment, but it shouldn't take that long.
And to be clear, we've looked at current property that's zoned within the city, and we feel like that there's about 1,000.
Yeah,
Rough math.
let me.
Here we go, quote.
Let me get you that number tomorrow. I'd feel more comfortable doing that. I know that we did look at the zoning and applied the density per the current city zoning. There is some remaining, say 1,000. I'll double check that.
But I mean, the decision we have to make right now would be, if we say we're at capacity in the area, really what we're talking about is the engineering to be able to expand that capacity. If we don't, then we're done in that
Correct.
overall area.
Right.
Well, and really serve the area, because we're saying we don't have the capacity to serve what we currently have.
We've got I've got a list of projects that I should have brought them today, but I've got a list of projects that have been approved and committed. That's about 840 some odd lots that are booked. Once those come online, we're at capacity. That's why we're saying we really don't want to book any more units or approve any more units until we at least start breaking ground on some capacity expansion out there. Otherwise, we're getting upside down, right? We're approving lots that we don't have capacity for.
Yeah, I mean, like, I agree with what Rick's saying about having that discussion on how we divvy that up in the future. I think it's important to talk about how that we're going to pay for that sewer capacity, as opposed to putting it all on, the backs of the ratepayer as it ends up coming down the line.
If we pay for the engineering, can we put that into the cost in the sewer district?
Sure.
Yeah,
So we
can.
can still pull that back in if we,
Right.
I mean, here's what I'm afraid of. The reason I want to know the number of units and all that is just so that we know what we're talking about is what would an assessment look like. I mean, if we leave this all up to an assessment, it may be big, it's so big that it might stop the development anyway. I mean, the nexus of all this is zoning density, that too much in this basin. It was first come, first served that created this $6 million problem. And so all the stuff that we've been talking about when it comes to sewer allocation for the last year or two is to avoid this. And here's the result of that, not staying within the certain limitations. And so, I mean, all I'm kind of saying is, for this next phase, I'd rather have it ironed out on the front end. And although I have empathy for the wait, for people, making people wait to develop, that's not how I would normally make a decision that's going to be that impactful, is to say, well, let's try to get our stuff in front of us. I'm not going to argue getting the engineering going that much. I mean, I personally, only because I want to know on the front end, would not want to do that, but
The only thing we
get
wouldn't,
it.
we wouldn't set, and I agree with everything that you're saying. The reason I don't think the engineering's an issue, because before we would set that sewer assessment number for the overall basin out there, we pretty much would wait until construction's finished to get what those
We
total
could.
costs would be, and then, add engineering time. I mean, we'd add all those things in there to come up with what that factor would be, because you're not going to be able to issue sewer taps until you knew.
I guess here's
Right.
what I'm saying, just because my ignorance on this is, if we look at how these lots lay out, for example, and we say, oh, well, a sewer assessment is going to be 40, going to the end of the spectrum here, but, it's $40,000 a lot to cover the assessment.
So 6.35 million at 15 years, 3.5% time value money, annual. divided by 3724, it's like $2,200-$2,300
Yes.
per connection.
I mean, you're
If we
paying,
can't add, I mean, so, all right, so that's,
It's not extreme.
I feel, yeah, I guess I was messed up thinking if we continue to go out into the other 600 acres, but we just won't.
You're going to get to the 3720, the 3724 has to pay it back.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, the 600, we have about 600 acres left, and only 1,000,
Yeah.
and only 1,000 units can go there, so, you know, we're essentially, when we do this, we're gonna be telling people all that other 600 acres that's in our growth boundary that's yet to be annexed is gonna be at 1.5 units per acre, period.
Well, it's going to be a step or land application.
Another question, which I'll get into later. but-
Is this not something we could do in a work, I know we saw it at the workshop, but is this not something we could do and spend more time at a workshop, and what's the
I'm okay. Y'all
downside?
think we wanna go on with the engineering? Y'all go ahead. I'm cool. I mean, you know, I see the value of that. One of the things that I'll add to this, though, to make sure we're thinking about it, is if we do go ahead with the engineering, we also need to make sure that we've got something in place as to the old grandfather idea and where are we gonna cut, where are we gonna cut this on, you know, because everybody's gonna want to try to get this in. As soon as we get this done, they're gonna want to try to be next in line, I assume.
Right. We're meeting tomorrow to talk about how staff's going to message this, and do we let people continue through the planning process even without the commitment to expand? And I see your head. Yeah, I think we've all kind of,
Details,
yeah,
my answer
yeah,
would be
yeah,
clearly no.
okay.
I mean, that's part of what that's
And I
part
mean,
of why
really,
I'm concerned.
you know, I would think, a workshop's a good area to discuss this, but, you know, if it's not, the people who are coming after this $7 or $8 million enhancement, part of that was caused by the people who came before. So, you know, I would really look at overall, you don't want to punish the people who came after for that $8 million and say, okay, look, all these people are paying $2,500 a unit. You really need to look at that globally overall and say, everyone in that area starting now is going to have to start paying that extra fee because this is what we're having to do.
Right.
Because of that.
There's the 840 lots in there that, I mean, they're kind of they haven't connected yet.
But I mean, you know, I think that really, if we're saying there's 840 lots that are in there and we know that we're getting ready to have to spend,
Right.
say that's $10 million,
Right.
and that's a pretty easy number to figure out as we move forward that.
I suggest too, you know, we're still working on the future land use map, and so talking with Greg McKnight and planning and trying to come in and knowing what we know now, and you know, we've taken a 30,000-foot sewer allocation model, and we're starting to get more granular into certain areas that we know we've had issues, and so we're just going to get more sophisticated year to year to year, and the future land use map can integrate with this, and so, as you say, if we know how much sewer we got, let's use the future land use map to dovetail with that and to integrate with what we know we have on a sewer capacity basis. So I think we're getting there. We're maturing and getting better, but more discussion is warranted.
And overall, the discussion that would be good for us to talk about as well, if we know with Darren bringing up the step, you know, the step discussion, and we've discussed this, that, you know, for us really to talk about when would a step system be warranted, that, you know, if a step system we approved a step system years ago in an area that we knew there's no way we can get sewer out there. I mean, it's just, so we really need to look at when are we okay with this step system? If it's because someone can't get sewer to the property and it's more out of our service area, then do we really want to allow a step system that maybe needs to develop as a step system under the county, not the city, as opposed to reaching out and just bringing something into the cities? That's another overall discussion on step systems. All right, so you have this.
Related note, do we allow, in our step system world, do we allow a different number than what CUD allows?
Yes, we did.
Well, do you know those numbers off the top of your head?
I think we're probably about a 1.3 multiplier. I think our flux, it all has to do with the flux rate that we allow to perk through the septic field. I think CUD is a 0.15 gallon per day per square foot. We're 0.2 gallons per day per square foot. So we allow more infiltration, which means you can build more houses on the same size field. So it may be a 4 to 3 type thing. We can build 4 houses to CUD's 3 kind of deal.
Yeah.
Something in that magnitude.
33% more, that's a lot. It is a lot, 33% more, that's
Yeah.
that's a big difference. All right.
But that's not a standard based on the soils, that's some other standard, because.
So the state of Tennessee lets 0.25.
Okay, that's what.
So we were underneath the states and CUD's is
Counties.
under that. So it's really, and then you have to put 50% more, you have to have a 50% reserve area in case something fails. So it's a pretty we're still in a pretty conservative position. We're not doing anything crazy out there.
Sorry, I got
The part that puts us in maybe a precarious situation from a development standpoint is that if the developer knows they can get more yield by going with the city, then they clearly want to go with the city, but it puts us in a situation where maybe there's a piece of property that we know is harder for us to provide services to.
We could change our standard if we want to change it exactly. as
We
CUD.
probably need to have an overall discussion in that, because I think there's several projects that are going to start coming through, on STEP, and we can't, the one that we just approved came through, that's a STEP unit, and typically you don't see, in the county, you're going to see very few STEP systems where townhomes are going to be built. I mean, that you typically are not going to see a lot of that. So what you don't want to happen, in my opinion, is that we start seeing step systems for us should be the exception, not the rule. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
and that really needs to be how we look at that.
Us adopting step system design guidelines was just intended to benefit the city's growth and annex, that we wouldn't get all of a sudden a perimeter of CUD county step systems and then we're unable to annex anything in the future. You basically get kind of walled in. So this was our way of saying, even though you can't get sewer and you're not incentivized to ask for annexation because you can't get sewer, you're incentivized to ask for annexation because you get a better yield on the step system design. So it really was intended to help the city continue to annex. And if it's not doing that, then we need to regroup.
All right, so you have this request for engineering in front of you. Craig, I hope you're taking notes on a lot of stuff for workshop.
Yeah, I mean, look, guys, I'm good with, after the discussion, I'm good with the engineering, so I just think,
It's a big
let's try to have a
discussion.
commitment that we do have a discussion about this, because I think it's really important that we deal with it, so I go ahead and make the motion that we approve it after all that.
Second. Motion is second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. You now have the Northeast Regional Pump Station SSR Task Order Amendment Number 2.
Okay, again, a little bit of history. Sorry to go into more detail maybe than you want, but NERP's engineering design fee. This is about a $2.26 million design, and you can see the extent of the gravity system improvements all the way down to DeJarnett Lane and abandoning some pump stations even on Compton Road in the red, and then in the kind of the blue and purple. A force main, which really does an end run, and it follows the Cherry Lane alignment until you get past Oakley subdivision, and then we route that straight to the water resource recovery facility. So this is about a $20 to $25 million capital improvement. The amendment that we're asking for today, it's based on some, I've asked the engineers when they do extra work, get it to me in bite-sized chunks, so at the very end, we don't have a big, huge engineering change order. But we have revised the alignments. You can kind of see in the blue, the ballooned areas where we went back and had to make some revisions in the alignment based on really field conditions that we saw weren't conducive to the original alignment. So $28,115 is the added fees for SSR. The other thing, it's a little odd, not odd, but we had in the original design fee the reimbursable expenses. This was the geotech, natural resources survey, cultural resources survey in the amount of $87,000. That was not part of the $2.2 million engineering fee, but they were by contract reimbursable expenses. That number's gone up about $16,700 again because of the changes involved. But we're really asking for the amendment of $28,115 to SSR's design fee, and really just approve or make you aware or ask for approval for the $103,827 on the reimbursable expenses.
Move for approval.
Second. Motion is second.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we have new administrative building architectural design services.
Sir, this is our admin building on the corner of Vine and Broad, right here next to City Hall. We're looking at tearing that down and building a new administrative building based on some of the potential activities in the area between Vine Church and Broad Street. So we're looking at a new two-story building, about 12,500 square feet. We're looking at about a $300 to $350 per square foot cost. So that puts it somewhere between $3.75 million and $4.4 million. We've budgeted $5 million to include lease of temporary office space and furniture, fixtures, and equipment. The architectural design is with Klein Sweeney Associates in the amount of $234,875. They based that on the $300 per square foot, and they are not going to adjust that if it comes in higher. They said that they believe they're using their AIA, their architectural, the formula that they use to determine fees. So we would ask for your approval to get this design underway.
And just a reminder on this, I think we deferred a couple of years ago that we were looking at doing a remodel project at the Murfreesboro Water and Sewer building, because you're at 8,000 square feet right now.
Roughly, yes. 7,500, yeah.
And I think the bid on that, just the interior remodel project came in at like 1.2 million. And we determined that was more than what the building was worth. So
talked to Joe Kay at the Christmas party, and just to let you all know, the city did not pay anything for that building. That building was funded through a CDBG grant, so it was a free building.
We got any more of those?
We got any more of that? I don't know if we got any more of those grants. That ARP money's coming in, man. That's pretty close.
So one of the reasons that we're having this discussion is just the age of the building, and anything that's done to it is really just throwing good money after bad.
We looked at putting a second story on top of that existing building, and it the nightmares of maybe some other issues, some other projects where we tried to renovate an existing structure. We thought it better to just scrape it, put something else up.
Move for approval. Hold on one second. We got a motion.
Darren, this will be, these services are subject to legal's final approval of the.
Okay, I thought we got that.
I didn't see it attached, so I couldn't remember. I don't think it's finally been signed off on.
Okay, got it.
I don't expect any issues.
Perfect.
I'll also, you're anxious to do it, I know. I'll also add that this is part of a larger consideration that we're doing on that land back there. And so we want to move forward to some, but we'll be very cautious as we move forward so we can utilize the expenses on here if we do make adjustments to where the building is actually located, and whether it's part of a larger project or not. So that's forthcoming. We're working on that now, and I just want to let you know that if we need to come back and talk about different things with this, we'll make sure that anything that's expended now is useful in the future.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I mean, not necessarily before I second this motion, but, about the building in between where we sit and that building is also pretty old too, right? I mean,
The old city hall?
Yeah.
Where the fire admin and our engineering is? Yes.
so I'm assuming that bigger picture
Yeah.
encapsulate that as well.
All those buildings along there
All right.
is part of that.
Second.
Motion is second.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Chocolate?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right,
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate the
Darren.
discussion.
Did you get to make a motion?
All right, you have 2 beer permits in front of you.
These are for changes in ownership for restaurants at 1813 Memorial Boulevard and 3284 Franklin Road. The applicants have met requirements for a beer permit, and staff recommends approval pending final building and codes inspections.
Second.
Motion is second.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Chocolate?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we have no board and commission appointments. Any statements to be paid?
No, sir.
Or any other business from staff?
Just to wish council a Merry Christmas, the last meeting of the year. Won't meet until after the first of the year. And so with that, Happy New Year. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas. Any other business from council?
I got one thing while Sam and Darren, and this is just something to kind of think on too. I don't know if it's a workshop thing here, but just kind of thinking along the lines of what we were just talking about on the sewer allocation. It's just, we've got a couple of projects coming through, seen them at planning. We got one or two more coming, and we heard a little bit from Mr. Baines about one that came through us tonight. But, water and drainage seems to just come up in every single development that comes through us nowadays. And I suspect it's because the low-hanging fruit's gone. Every piece of property has an issue these days, and water's certainly one of them. I just wonder if there's a way, kind of like what we're doing with the sewer engineering, is there a way to, and just because I know we can't just lay that on Sam and say, hey, go do this for the city as a whole, but is there a way for us to kind of look at what the likely candidates are, the places that are in the city that are already zoned, to have maybe a third-party engineer come in and go, hey, look, this is what really can go here if it's, or this is where you really don't need to do something. I guess, we just hear that in every single individual project that comes through here, and it always seems to be the exact same story, and we're just reliant on saying, well, Sam's looked at it, Sam's looked at it, that's out of my league. I just wonder if we should think about having a third party come in and just kind of let us know. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear that just to know, so I know, hey, look, yeah, it's an objective. There are no water problems. Because I said this in a planning commission meeting a couple weeks ago is, the argument that you keep putting a bunch of concrete down and the water's going to get worse makes sense to me logically, but I certainly don't know enough about it to know that you can just fix that easily. So I know people are doing permeable parking lots and things like that, and I guess I'm just looking to see, if that's something we need to incorporate kind of before it gets too late. So just something that's been on my mind, especially after going through all these separate projects, and maybe that's something if we, if you guys, staff, I just leave it to y'all to maybe talk through that. And if you just think, no way, Rick, that's not even warranted, call me and tell me, shut up, I'll shut up about it. But
Shut up.
thought it might be something good.
No.
No, I didn't say, I said staff. Not the quiet guy over in the corner.
Hey, I want to give a quick reminder. We have the New Year's Day 5K that will be out at Barfield. I think this is the fourth or fifth year. So that's going back out at Barfield, obviously on New Year's Day. Angela, what time is it? Okay. It's on our website, murfreesborotn.gov. And then, last but not least, as Craig wished the council a Merry Christmas, we want to wish all of our staff. We've had a lot of our staff and employees. We've had a lot of good things that have happened over the last 30 days, and hopefully keep that momentum going into the new year. So we want to thank all of our employees for how hard they work, and wish y'all a Merry Christmas to to your families and your loved ones. So with that, we'll stand adjourned.